We made it, people. The Season 1 finale, when Lost really became the show that we all know and love. Welcome to the Lost Explained episode guide, where we will be exploring and explaining the TV show Lost, episode by episode, mystery by mystery. This guide is spoiler heavy for the whole show and is intended for those who already know the secrets of the island. Please help the channel by checking out the other videos in this guide. The more views they get, the more chances I have of keeping this project going. Exodus is the epic 3-part finale of Season 1 and is multi-centric, as it follows pretty much all of the main characters in dovetailing storylines. The others are coming, the raft launches, a trek into darkness begins, a kid gets napped twice, and a hatch gets blown open. For the purposes of the guide, I'm going to be exploring all 3 parts as if they were one episode, so get yourself some popcorn and strap in, because we're going for a ride. Due to the sheer size of this 3-part finale, I'm going to break the review up into sections based on the main storylines the episodes follow. The Dark Territory trek, the raft crew, the Oceanic camp, the chase, and the flashbacks. I think Exodus is when Lost really turns into the show that we know and love. The entire vibe of Season 2 comes off the back end of this finale. Now, there are many first-time viewers who have a complicated relationship to Season 1. Some find it simply too slow and meandering, and I have seen that complaint come up since the show went off the air in 2010. Watching it week to week in the beginning, we didn't know where this thing was going or what to expect, and it consistently surprised us with the directions that it took. However, once the show developed the hype and reputation that come with a global hit TV show watched by everyone and their mother, the hopes of what to expect from it change when coming to it 15 years later. Not only has the perception changed, the way we consume media has changed, and I think this is a big part of why Season 1 gets a mixed response from new audiences. However, I always tell people to wait, to be patient, and that the season finale is where the show really kicks into high gear, and if they like what they see in Exodus, then they can rest assured that the rest of the series will follow a similar trajectory, because this 3-parter represents what Lost is about to become. An epic serialised adventure series with a focus on character and a compelling set of mysteries that have their origins in both science fiction and the supernatural. We are certainly a long way from the quiet survival dramas of Year One's first half, and I for one am grateful to be stepping away from that and trekking deeper into the jungle of mystery. Part 1 has one of the most memorable cold opens from the series, as Danielle Rousseau makes her way into the camp, like a ghost emerging from the fog, in order to ominously declare to our oceanic survivors,
"The others are coming."
Boom, and we're off to the races. After having kicked the can down the road for the latter half of the season, the show is finally pulling the trigger on the idea that Ethan was not working alone, and that there are indeed others out there. It's a brilliant catalyst for the finale, and sets into motion several storylines. Rousseau recaps her backstory with some more details thrown in. Her warning is seemingly confirmed by the pillar of black smoke rising from the other side of the island, captured in that iconic 180-degree shot that lines up our major players together in a rare "the gang's all here" portrait. Up first, let's talk about the Dark Territory trek. This pushes Jack, Locke, Kate, Hurley, and bizarrely Dr. Arzt into a reluctant expedition team. We all sensed something was up with Artz's inclusion the first time around. Why would this character introduced at the 11th hour be included in such a big mission? Either he's a bad guy in disguise, or he is here to serve another narrative function. It will turn out to be the latter, but we'll get to that. I'd argue that Hurley's inclusion is also a bit questionable. He is hardly an essential person to bring along, outside of the fact the writers simply wanted him to be part of the team because he needed to fit in somewhere. Obviously he's not on the raft, and he won't be able to keep up with Charlie when Aaron gets taken, so in order to keep him in dramatic play, this made the most sense. And let's face it, the ultimate reason for him to be here on a story level is so that he will notice the numbers on the hatch at the very last minute. If anything, Saeed should be the extra man, considering they will be handling explosives and he is one of the few people among them with anything close to experience in that area. But he gets annexed because the person chasing after Russo later had to have some kind of connective tissue with her. You can see the writers trying to get everyone to slot into the right place here, and for the most part they do, but it does require some contrivance, and not everyone is served equally or well by this character placement calculus, which I shall get into. Anyway, the group's goal is simple: reach the Black Rock and retrieve dynamite powerful enough to blow open the hatch before whatever's coming reaches the camp. There are a few things to clear up first at the camp before they all set off. Perhaps the most significant one comes in the form of a scene that, I'm sure many Losties would agree, is the greatest scene in the entire season, if not the whole series. It's a scene that has been earned over the course of 23 episodes between Dr. Jack and the con artist formerly known as Sawyer. This is a perfect alchemy of great writing and great performances. Sawyer wants to give Jack a parting gift, something he held back on before, but now recognises as the catharsis that his island rival needs in order to make peace with himself and his grief.
And this guy, Christian, tells me he wishes he had the stones to pick up the phone, call his kid. Tell him he's sorry. He's a better doctor than he'll ever be. He's proud. He loves him.
It's the first time these two men connect on an emotional level. Sawyer knows what it means to lose a parent in tragedy, to not have closure. While he is still searching for his own, he knows he can at least give it to the man standing before him, despite their differences. If you didn't like Sawyer before, it's really hard not to warm to him now. And Matthew Fox's reception of this revelation is deeply moving. Watching him slowly realise, then finally break, gets me every time. He actually tries to hide his emotion from Sawyer, perhaps in fear of judgment, but Sawyer is magnanimous and compassionate in this moment. Regardless of their conflicts from the season, and their many conflicts to come, these two men will always have this powerful moment together, and so too will we. This really is one of the top 3 scenes in the show for me. So the track begins, and Russo leads the way. It's a long walk to the Black Rock, as seen through a cool montage. This was back when the island felt vast and unknowable. They enter the so-called Dark Territory, a place whose very name seems engineered to trigger genre instincts, and for good reason. A brush with the smoke monster, still unseen, sees Kate ask Russo,
"What was that then?" "It's a security system."
Security system? What does that mean?
Its purpose is that of any security systems. To protect something.
Protect what?
The island.
We'll cover the meaning of her response under the Jungle of Mystery section. The group arrives at the fabled Black Rock only to discover, along with us, that it isn't a literal Black Rock landmark of some kind, but actually a slave ship from the 1800s beached in the middle of the jungle. It's quite a sight, and will be a location that we return to several times throughout the seasons, and we will even learn how the men in this chamber met their end. Art, who has spent most of the episode lecturing everyone, becomes a walking cautionary tale about arrogance and overconfidence. Just one wrong move with unstable dynamite and Arts literally explodes, leaving nothing behind but a splatter of irony. This became such a memorable, horrifically hilarious moment for the show that they even tried to recapture it again in Season 6, with poor Ilana suffering an unfortunate callback. Dr. Arts was basically full of it anyway. The story he tells about the discovery of nitroglycerin is totally inaccurate. The man who discovered it did not blow himself up from experiments. Like much of Arts' claims, it was mostly hot air. There is more Jack and Locke tension as they decide to offload the dynamite anyway, despite the warning and the danger, and I always loved this exchange between them.
Bleh.
play games, John?
Yes, Jack, Locke does indeed like to play games, and he treats a lot of his engagements with the island as if they were part of a larger campaign. He's not wrong, they are all pieces on a board being operated by two demigod-like figures. One can make the analogy that Locke himself was a pawn of fate, and in some respects he is, just like everyone else. However, if we are going to go with the chess analogy, then Boone was more like a pawn, sacrificed early in order to move the bigger pieces forward in the game, whereas Locke is a more valuable piece who later becomes a crucial sacrifice. I prefer to liken him to a bishop. The moves he makes are absolutely essential to winning the overall game. The track back with the dynamite is a tip of the hat to classic thriller The Wages of Fear, although it does lack the palpable suspense of that film, simply because we are fairly secure that none of these major characters are going to die abruptly the way Art's did. On the way back, there is another run-in with the monster in the jungle. This time we actually get a glimpse of it. First-time viewers might not even understand that the small wisp of smoke Jack sees is the monster, but we will later learn that Smokey can reduce the mass of his cloud into being this small bouncing shuttle to move around more efficiently. See the Mr. Echo confrontation scene as the smoke cloud collapses into a smaller form when retreating. So this encounter causes some mayhem and yet more disconnect between Doctor and Hunter. Locke wants to see the monster again to recapture that moment of beauty from Walkabout, only this time he realises that the monster is not always so docile in his presence. A lot of people question why Locke is suddenly afraid of the monster this time when he was unafraid before. The way I compare the scenario is that of coming across a stray dog. The first time Locke met the dog, it was friendly and allowed itself to be petted. The second time, the dog was snarling and barking and running towards him at speed. Same dog, very different energies. This scene is mirrored again later in Season 5 when Montand is dragged beneath the temple. We'll circle back to this event in the Jungle of Mystery for further analysis. There is something admirable about the way Jack throws himself after Locke to save him, a man whom he has started to really despise. It demonstrates Jack's altruistic nature, his determination to save everyone, even those he takes against, although this instinct will be thoroughly tested before the series is through. Anyway, the encounter with the monster pushes the two men further apart and sets the table for what comes next. On the final leg back to the hatch, we get the scene that goes on to underpin Jack and Locke's conflict that will also go on to underpin and define the entire series.
I believe that I was being tested.
Tested?
Yeah, tested. I think that's why you and I don't see eye to eye sometimes, Jack. Because you're a man of science.
Yeah. What does that make you?
Me? Well, I'm a man of faith.
It is an absolutely classic exchange, with one of the purest distillations of the differences between the two men laid out in no uncertain terms. Their debate crystallises into this philosophical tug-of-war that's been simmering all season, and will be literally played out in Year 2 over the button. Locke finally gives voice to one of his many theories about what has been happening to them.
We were brought here for a purpose, for a reason, all of us. Each one of us was brought here for a reason.
Brought here. And who brought us here, John?
The island.
The island has plucked them out of the world and brought them here to play out some, as of yet unfulfilled destiny, that all of their struggles are happening with purpose, and that the hatch is part of a larger design. Jack sees Locke's certainty as a delusion, a dangerous kind of faith that's already cost Boone his life. It's the show's central thesis distilled into one argument, and it's bloody great. By the time the team reaches the hatch with dynamite in hand, that tension has stretched to a breaking point as Jack declares to Kate,
If we survive this, we survive tonight, we're gonna have a Locke problem.
I was very much Team Locke at this point in the series. We had all seen too much to deny that he was onto something. So it often bothered me when characters took against him and decided that he was crazy or dangerous and needing to be dealt with. However, looking back now, knowing where this story goes, I think the truth was somewhere in the middle. Locke was right, but he sometimes went about being right in the wrong way. Hurley fulfills his purpose of being on this trek when he finally spots the numbers etched into the metal housing of the hatch and panics, convinced that opening this thing will unleash the same curse that has stalked him for years. And let's be honest, this did signal a bad omen. What if opening this hatch was going to lead to their doom? And we are left asking those questions as the hatch is finally blown open in rather spectacular fashion. The season ends on perhaps the most iconic shot of the series as we pull back into the depths and darkness of the unknown, the hatch acting as a literal and symbolic door to the next chapter of Lost. The Raft Crew. For most of Season 1, the raft has functioned as the castaways' shrinking lifeline to the world, but in the finale it becomes a potent symbol of hope, and after almost half a season of teasing, it is finally ready to set sail. There is that little stumble at the start. I always laugh at Michael blaming Sawyer for the derailment with the pointed look.
Can't believe this! Can't believe it! What are you looking at me for? It's not my fault!
But otherwise there isn't much in Exodus Part 1 that happens with the raft crew until that glorious send-off. There are goodbyes to be given before the launch, as the group splits up, which will become a common occurrence in season finales. I love all of these mostly silent farewells, set to Michael Giacchino's indelible score. A few highlights for me are the awkward interaction between Michael and Sun, initially uncertain of how to deal with their romantic tension before turning it into a respectful hug, subtly underwriting the idea that they are parting as friends, and nothing more. When Charlie hands Sawyer the bottle of messages that survivors have written for their families, that symbolises trust and respect, of Sawyer's full acceptance at becoming one of them. He is no longer the outcast, although he still holds out hope for Kate to show up, but she is occupied elsewhere. She was there when he wasn't, he's there when she isn't, and that will be pretty much the state of their relationship. Right now, there is more than their bond at stake. And of course, the goodbye between Walt and Vincent, which the sequence really milks in the best possible way, as Vincent swims after the raft, not wanting to let his best friend go without him. Or in that weirdly intuitive Vincent way, maybe he's worried about what is in store for Walt whilst on the high seas. I love how Giacchino's theme starts off melancholic and sad, then slowly builds into triumphant victory. As the raft sets off and unfurls its sails, it brings together the survivors for one elated, rapturous moment of celebration. There is hope, once again. It's absolutely beautiful, and while the tone has shifted from bittersweet farewells to courageous seafaring heroism, this sequence brings a lot of people to tears. There is something truly magical about it, so much so that even the showrunners have cited it as one of their favourite moments from the series ever. Whilst on the raft, we get our first bigger picture view of the island, with Michael remarking,
"How's a place this big never get discovered?"
Indeed, only people the island wants will ever discover it. There are several interactions on the raft that are worth discussing. The first one comes between Jin and Michael when Jin gifts him the watch he had sworn to deliver elsewhere, but Jin has rediscovered himself in all of this. If they are to find rescue, he is almost certain to turn his back on Mr. Paik and the man he had become. It's an incredibly humbling moment for Michael too, as he accepts this gift of friendship from his #1 rival on the island. Jin's newfound loyalty to Michael will be cemented in Season 2. I really love the friendship that blooms between them. There is, however, one moment on the raft that has always niggled me a little bit, and it's the bit where Sawyer sings Redemption Song to himself.
Redemption song is all
Singing Bob Marley?
No. Why, you like Bob Marley?
And who doesn't like Bob Marley?
The writer's trying to move Sawyer away from being perceived as a racist bigot by having him sing this Bob Marley classic and the obvious connotations that Sawyer is looking to be redeemed. To me, it's a cringy exchange.
Hey, this dude can't be too much of a bigot. He likes Bob Marley.
The writers had already set up Sawyer's evolution and redemption without the need for this. After all, he is the only white man on a makeshift boat with a black man and his child, and a Korean man who barely speaks English. Those ironic circumstances alone are enough to convey Sawyer's softening without the need to ram the point further home. When Sawyer dives in after the broken rudder, he does so without hesitation. It's a rather heroic act, something we haven't seen him do this season, in which he risks his own life and safety to salvage the mission, and it's a bit of drama thrown in to make this part of the story seem more exciting when compared to the island adventures, but it serves his character well. This leads Michael to gently confront Sawyer later about why he is really on this trip.
The way I see it, there's only two choices. You're either a hero, or you want to die.
Well, I ain't no hero, Mike.
Not yet, James. Not yet. Now, who would have thought that Michael, of all people, would have insight into Sawyer in this way? Of course, Sawyer does have a bit of a death wish. If he is to follow in the footsteps of the men from his past, that is all that awaits him. Without revenge burning in his heart, who is he really? Just a con man and a murderer whose father killed his mother then himself. Perhaps the only thing worth living for beyond revenge is the woman he left behind. But isn't it tragically ironic that Michael is predicting his own state of mind with this observation? Because in season 4, he too will find himself wrestling between wanting to die and being a hero. When the radar picks up another vessel close by and they look out to the pitch black horizon, there's this ominous sense of dread that starts to creep in. Just what the hell is out there? There was never any doubt in my mind that whoever they come across, they were probably going to be bad news. And of course, they are. Enter Tom Friendly and his tugboat of trouble, a character who we shall be discussing in depth in season 2. Again, this is a pretty iconic scene in the Lost universe, as the initial excitement and pleasantries are soon dispensed with when Tom proclaims,
Only the thing is, we're gonna have to take the boy.
Ugh, that line is still chilling. Anyone who got ahead of the writers when watching this three-parter might have already guessed that the child the others were coming for, who Rousseau was referring to, was not baby Aaron, but Walt. The abduction is over within a blink, leaving the crew in the dark waters with Sawyer shot, Jin missing, and Michael overboard. I know people make fun of Michael screaming for his son all the time, but this particular instance is really heart-wrenching. Just when father and son had connected and become a unit, their relationship is snatched away from them once again by forces beyond their control. It's a painful cliffhanger for their Year 1 story to end on. Also, notice how the episode began with Walt screaming at Michael.
No, you're not. You're not my father. You're not my father.
And how the episode ends with Walt being taken away from him and screaming. One of the most endearing aspects of this raft plotline is that Josh Holloway, Harold Perrineau, and Daniel Day Kim are, to this very day, incredibly good friends who still hang out together. They clearly bonded on the set of the first season, but their annexation into a separate storyline here, and for the first half of season 2, clearly resonated in real life. I love the fact that they became good friends from this experience. Raft crew for life, yo. The Oceanic Camp. And here we come to the less successful part of the three-part finale, the stuff going down back at the beach and the caves. All of the raft-related stuff in the first part is golden, but the next two parts quickly run out of steam whether on the beach or at the caves. With the exception of Saeed and Charlie, who get their own offshoot adventure when Rousseau takes Aaron, which I'll get into, there isn't a lot for the characters left behind here to be getting on with, and based upon the dynamics observed in this finale, there is some trouble on the horizon. Many of the female characters are given nothing exciting to do other than wait around in the caves for the men to return from their missions. Only Kate and guest character Rousseau get any real direct involvement in the finale's major events. Claire, Sun and Shannon are largely left on the sidelines and, in my opinion, completely underserved, and it is very noticeable here. Why can't the girls have their own side quest or mix it up more with the boys? Why wouldn't Claire go with Saeed and Charlie to get her own child back? Imagine Shannon insisting that she go along on the Dark Territory trek and continuing that tension with Locke, knowing that her brother died for the sake of what was inside this hatch. There are quite a few missed opportunities there, and this foreshadows how the writer's room won't always know what to do with their female characters, especially in finales. though thankfully Elizabeth Sarnoff joins the team in season 2 and brings a much needed woman's touch to some of these characters and scenes. Ana Lucia would be the show's first attempt to course correct the gender imbalance in terms of having women engaged in the action and leadership side of the storytelling, although that would backfire rather spectacularly due to how much fans ended up hating her. It won't actually be until Juliet's introduction in season 3 when this balance gets redressed in a better way. So, what do we get? Well, there's a standout scene between Saeed and Shannon, one of my favourites between them, as Shannon is still reeling from the death of Boone and feeling overwhelmed by the threat that they all face, and Saeed offers her both strength and support.
It's too much. It's too much.
It won't be too much if I carry it for you. Now come on.
It's a beautiful moment between them, and unlike some of their previous scenes that felt more like a holiday romance, this feels real to me. There's some Charlie and Claire stuff as she fusses over Aaron. The beginning of the second part even opens on Aaron's eye, suggesting that this episode will be told from his point of view. This ends up only being a motif, intended as a callback to how early episodes often opened on someone's eye to announce the character in focus. It's also a way to say, look how far we've come from Jack's eye opening in the pilot. There is a whole new human being among the survivors now. Although we don't get much with Aaron beyond the fact he is kidnapped and disappears until towards the end of the finale. Getting him back becomes the drive of the narrative, rather than anything he personally experiences. Of course, Russo returns quite intentionally to take Aaron from Claire in a gambit to get her own child back. It's an absolutely insane plan, but Russo isn't exactly operating with a full deck. I love the tease of a memory being triggered in Claire when she sees Russo's scratch marks. Without the context of that interaction, we are left to believe that perhaps Russo was involved in Claire's original abduction in some way. It's a great hook for where Claire's story will go next season. This throws a spanner into the works of Saeed's day. Both he and Charlie are confronted with this kidnapping. Charlie immediately searches for someone to blame and throws a quick punch at Saeed, who deals with it very gracefully.
Do not hit me again. You want to waste time assigning blame? There's plenty to go around.
And they set off to catch up to Russo before she can hand off the newly named Aaron to those savage jungle-dwelling nutters on the other side of the island, who may or may not exist. This leaves Claire, Shannon and Sun behind at the caves, with literally nothing else to do but wait. There is one key scene that I think serves the larger purposes of Lost, that I always felt was another way for the writers to convey a possibility about what was going on by getting a character to give voice to it out loud. This time it's Sun.
Who do you think is punishing us?
Fate.
She's half right. This is about fate, but they aren't being punished. Claire's response is disheartening though.
No such thing as fate.
It seems losing Aaron has also robbed her of her hope. The innocent blonde Aussie, full of optimism and openness to the mysteries of the universe, is now angry and cynical. The reason why I point this out is not to highlight where she has been and what she has lost, but where she is going and who she will become. It is actually giving us a sneak peek at what Claire will be like when untethered from her child in the future, and this is something the Man in Black will use against her in the coming seasons. The Chase. This side quest has great pacing and momentum. We're essentially following these two men on one long chase over the next hour and change. Saeed and Charlie haven't had any major storylines together until now, just some significant scenes sprinkled throughout the season. So it is cool to see them teamed up as they both bring different energies and personalities to the pursuit. And in real life they're both Brits, so I'm sure Naveen and Dominic enjoyed the on and off-screen dynamics of that. Their first significant pit stop is at the Beechcraft in order to catch their breath, but of course this scene only exists to introduce Charlie to the next season's temptation. It's another tease for what is to come, but in a good way. I totally dig the shot of Charlie staring down at the broken Virgin Mary, full of heroin. The bitter irony of this Catholic's greatest weakness being stashed inside his greatest hope for salvation. There is an incident with Charlie getting hit on the head with some rocks, rigged to drop via a classic Russo trap. designed to provide an extra obstacle and some urgency to the situation. One of my favourite quick fix medical treatments in the show comes here when Saeed cauterises the head wound using gunpowder and flame. Ouch, but it is pretty badass. And whatever your feelings on Charlie are, one has to admire how determined he is to keep moving forward and more than prepared to take the pain. So their zip across the island ends on the opposite shores from where they began. They find the origin of the smoke, a burning black volcanic rock on a brazier, but there are no footprints or signs of other people until Rousseau emerges from the tree line with the crying baby. I know she's a broken woman, but Rousseau gets off a bit easy here considering she just did the unthinkable and stole a newborn baby. You do see the moment when she comes to her senses though, and the realisation of what she has done to another mother. Great performance by Mira Furlan as always. Of course, Charlie gets to stand in judgment of her, using a nasty put-down that was once used against him.
You're pathetic.
You're pathetic.
And he's doing this knowing that he just picked up a Virgin Mary statue on the way there. Saeed is naturally more empathetic, yet they leave her, as he first found her, alone. The flashbacks. This is the first multi-centric flashback narrative we have seen since the pilot, only this is far more ambitious, as every major character gets a look in. Let's start with Jack. The good doctor is having a drink in the airport lounge, something that will become a bit of a habit for him once he's off the island, and it is here he meets Ana Lucia. Michelle Rodriguez was an exciting new face in film at the time this was shot, coming fresh off mainstream hits like The Fast and the Furious, and indie darlings like Girl Fight. She was one of the next big young stars in the making, so her popping up on this show demonstrated just how big of a deal the series was becoming. In 2004, usually TV spelt death to big movie careers, especially when you were just blowing up. Lost was part of a wave of TV shows in the early 2000s that was beginning to shake that up. Jack and Anna share a drink and a flirt together. Little do either of them know that both of them share a contact in common, Christian Shepherd. Anna flew out with him to Australia, and now Jack is flying him home to bury him. This scene exists to directly set up the tail section arc of Year 2, which is made clear when Anna announces she's in the tail section. If I had one complaint about this scene, it's that Anna is too chirpy and upbeat. We find out later that she is actually a very troubled, quite morose character, so her energy here feels a little incongruous, simply down to the writers and Michelle not quite knowing who this gal was yet. Other flashback scenes worth noting include Edward Mars making a return to brief airport security on his captured fugitive Kate Austen. The scene is used as a vessel to help clarify the convoluted nature of her flashbacks a little bit, somewhat prompted from fan questions about the timeline of events and how exactly the toy plane ended up in a vault, as well as the insane need for carrying 4 guns aboard a plane. Once again, that silly bank robbery backstory requiring yet further clarification. The Marshal does a good job of summarising it all for our benefit, despite the fact that none of it makes any sense. The toy plane in a vault and 4 guns in a briefcase thing was always going to be a hard sell. Just a small thing to note about Kate and Edward later, he gives his jacket to cover her cuffs when they board the plane, which shows that he did have some compassion for Kate, and he was willing to give her some dignity as they boarded the flight. I know this detail is there mainly to explain how no one saw her in cuffs when she came aboard, but it also helps to flesh out their complicated hunter-hunted dynamic. In story, it tells us that Edward Mars had come to be very invested in Kate as a person. Boone makes a comeback as he and Shannon bicker their way through the airport, already back into their old routine of pretending to be brother and sister. Shannon demonstrates her callousness to him by throwing Saeed, a total stranger, under the bus by playing on other people's paranoia and prejudice. It's a wonderfully ironic masterstroke, considering where Shannon and Saeed end up. Watching him treated like a potential terrorist by the authorities hits differently. This moment is a small nod to where audiences were at psychologically in terms of how they viewed Middle Easterners so shortly after 9/11. The truth is, Westerners were paranoid about Arab men, especially at airports and on flights during this time. But shows like Lost were doing quite a remarkable job of moving away from the stereotypes. Saeed was now a fully dimensional guy, and it hurt to see him being treated like a criminal when in fact we knew him to be otherwise. That is the power of storytelling, and the power of empathy. One of the best ever Charlie scenes from the show, at least in terms of his addiction storylines, happens here too. In fact, I always find this scene quite hard to watch due to how well staged and acted it is. Charlie spent a drug-fueled night with a groupie in a hotel room, or that's what he wanted to believe. The truth is, she was an addict just like him, and only slept with him to get her next fix. And now she wants more, but a mostly broke Charlie doesn't want to share as he has a long journey ahead and no drive shaft reunion to fall back on. The argument between them escalates into a full-blown attack, and we see the desperation of two addicts wrestling over some rocks of heroin laid bare. This scene feels really raw and real. Locke's final piece of the flashback puzzle helps to answer the question of why no one ever noticed that he was in a wheelchair before the crash, and that's because he was put on the plane first. And there is this really well-judged moment where Locke concedes to being carried on, and he just seems so defeated and humiliated, especially after being kicked off his walkabout tour. I feel so bad for the guy here. Hurley naturally gets the most frantic and funny flashback as a bizarre series of accidents see him risk missing the flight. The setbacks that plague his trip to and through the airport remind me of the crazy events of Planes, Trains and Automobiles, and I wonder if that was an inspiration behind it. I shall discuss the weirdness and purpose of all of his delays in the Jungle of Mystery section, as I have a very specific take on what was happening there. There are some look-ins with other characters, but these are the moments that stand out for me. All of the flashbacks cascade and culminate in one of the most elegant montages of the series. I've always called this sequence Final Boarding. This is up there with some of my favourite sequences. I remember exactly how I felt first watching it. I felt sad. Sad that this season was over, sad that these characters had suffered so much and seemed so alone, yet at the same time I had this weird pang of nostalgia for the episodes that had come before, because I knew that these characters would find each other on the island. Seeing them in their separate bubbles here, absorbed in their own worries and heartbreaks, made me acutely aware of where they would go, how they would change, and how deeply they would come to matter to one another. This montage taps into the notion that the stranger sitting beside you could, under different circumstances, become your closest ally, or your greatest love, or even your fiercest rival. It reframes the entire season in a single sweep, reminding us that this accidental collection of strangers on a plane has now become a makeshift family of survivors, some of whom they shall go on to lose. And this was the precise moment I realised that Lost had become something personal to me. I cared about these people and what happened to them, and that no matter what, I was going to stick it out until the end. No matter how long or far away that end seemed to be, I was going to be in this for the long haul. The final Jungle of Mystery section of the season. It's been quite the ride. The last few episodes went very light on the mysteries, but now they are back with a vengeance in the mythology-heavy Exodus. Where to begin? How about with the first question raised?
The others are coming.
How did Rousseau know the others are coming? Rousseau claims to have heard whispers in the jungle that said the others were coming to take the child, and this is apparently what prompted her to action. Of course, we know that the whispers in the jungle are not the others having audible chats with each other nearby. They are the voices of the dead. They know what's going on in this place because they are not bound by time or space like the living are. These ghosts are servants of the island until further notice. Rousseau was supposed to overhear this and interpret it accordingly, because it sets off a chain reaction of events. Once again, our old friend causality is in play. By warning the Oceanic group about the others, it expedites everything, launching the raft and opening the hatch, because the island knows it's time. Why did Rousseau call the monster a security system? This is an interpretation that Rousseau adopted from Robert, believing the monster to be there to protect the temple and the wider island. And they're not wrong. The smoke monster's original purpose was to be part of the protector equation, as implied by the episode Across the Sea, and the mother character being an embodiment of both protector and smoke monster. But this was the first real explanation that the show gave us as to what this mysterious creature in the jungle was supposed to be, laying the foundations for the reveals of Season 2, and perhaps the initial plans as to what the writers intended Smokey to be. Yes, there are some possible indications that they originally were going to make Smokey a Dharma experiment gone wrong. However, what I like is that even if the answer changed between Season 1 and Season 3 as to the fundamental nature of the smoke monster, the writers still managed to bring it all back to this line by Season 6. The idea that it was a security system for the island, only in a more supernatural sense rather than a scientific sense, and that rather than it being a lab-created entity gone wrong, it was now a supernaturally created entity gone wrong. How did the Black Rock end up in the jungle? The Black Rock indicates to the audience that the island has been ensnaring people for far longer than we have been seeing, in ways far stranger than anyone could have imagined. In Season 6 episode Ab Eterno, we see how it all went down. The Black Rock was off the coast of the island when a violent storm rolled in. The ship was caught in the groundswell, lifted up onto the crest of a gigantic tsunami wave that arced over the island and washed up far inland, thereby marooning the ship in the middle of the dark territory. There are more discussions we could have about what might have caused that storm in the first place. One cool way of looking at the tidal wave is that after their conversation on the beach, the man in black gets up and walks off into the jungle. He heads to the well, teleports down there, and turns that wheel to move the island. And the island jumps right into a new location at night, taking the Black Rock with it, creating an earth-shattering groundswell that causes the tsunami. This might explain the discrepancy of how the Black Rock goes from a beautiful sunny day to a raging sea at night. The other alternative explanation is that the island was caught in a naturally occurring tsunami event that it didn't actually cause itself. We do know that there are sudden shifts in weather on and around the island, and they can have a devastating effect on ships, as seen with Rousseau's science expedition. What's with the Hurley bird? The Hurley bird is one of Lost's goofiest mysteries in my opinion, one which I'm pretty sure was never actually intended to be a mystery. A lot of fans swore they could hear this huge jungle bird swoop down from the tree line and call out Hurley's name, and I think the writers' room became amused by this idea and worked it into the second season's finale as a callback.
That bird just say my name?
Yeah, it did. Right before it crapped gold.
By Sawyer making fun of that idea, it was probably supposed to put the theory to rest, but the fans were still asking about it by the final season, so the writers decided to address it once and for all in the epilogue, The New Man in Charge. In the Hydra orientation, Pierre Chang explains,
Genetic alteration. These fascinating hybrids, or hybrids as we call them, will be released and monitored to see how they adapt to the unique properties of the eye. Successful advanced studies in larger mammals.
So it's basically a Dharma experiment turned loose, a genetically engineered bird that imitates sounds like a parrot would. Or is it? Okay, I have my own theory here. I have always taken the view that the Man in Black is keeping an eye on the candidate somehow, inconspicuously, whilst occupying other forms. It's why we don't see him all of the time in smoke form stalking these people, because he doesn't have to do that when he can just appear as a boar to test candidate number 15, or to taunt candidate number 51. Maybe distract candidate number 16 so that he takes a bullet. Pose as polar bears to draw in candidate number 4, and take a bird's eye view of a whole lineup of candidates from the air. The average lifespan of a large jungle-dwelling bird is about 20 years. It's plausible that the original Hurley bird died, and the Man in Black adopted its form. If you had the power to turn into any formerly living creature, so long as it was now dead, then animals would certainly help you move through these island communities with complete invisibility, and you could learn everything you need to. Anyway, for a mystery that never actually seemed intended to be a mystery, we can have a lot of fun speculating about it. What was going on with Hurley's journey to the airport? Hurley's mad dash to the airport works on several levels at once. On the surface, yes, it feels like fate is throwing obstacles in his way. Every delay, every mishap, every ridiculous setback, yet these bad events are arguably blessings in disguise. Had he embraced the delays rather than fighting them, he would have missed a doomed flight. And by the time Hurley finally makes it to the gate, he fails to notice another cursed number. Oceanic 815 is departing from gate 23. Perhaps the point of making him so exhausted and harried by all of the delays is simply so that he wouldn't be in the right frame of mind to pick up on all of these bad omens. And we know the island is behind these events because it has left its signature everywhere. Why did the smoke monster try to take Locke? We don't quite know what the Man in Black's plan was here. Was he simply trying to create chaos, forcing the candidates to panic and use the dynamite in the hopes of blowing themselves up? We know that he is keen to kill them off and cannot do it directly, so instead engineers circumstances through which they might kill each other or themselves. Or is he genuinely trying to annex Locke from everyone else to get the man alone? I always assumed that had Jack not caught Locke in his grip, then Locke would have been brought down into the old Egyptian tunnels. Remember, they are in the dark territory here, not far from the temple boundary wall. And I imagine as Locke reorients himself in the dark, he would most likely encounter an apparition of the Man in Black in a dead person's form, someone whom Locke would start to receive instructions from, and that might officially begin the Man in Black's long con, something that now won't be ignited until the cabin sequence in Season 3. Who set the black smoke fire, and why? There are several possibilities here, and I'd like to go through them one by one, starting with the theory that has come to prominence over the years. The idea goes that the real Henry Gale crashed on the island in his balloon around this time, and that he was the one who actually set up the black smoke, intending it to act as a signal fire. After all, he wrote on that $20 bill that he intended to hike to a beach to make such a fire.
I'm hiking to one of the beaches to start a signal fire. But if you're reading this, I guess I didn't make it.
Then, after building it, perhaps Henry was confronted by the others, interrogated, and finally killed. This is an interesting way to view the smoke because it connects together different storylines from different seasons in a really clever way. However, this theory doesn't actually make any sense for several reasons. The first being that this is a very elaborate signal fire to build. Are we to believe that Henry Gale found and carried that huge black volcanic rock and constructed the brassiere for it to sit on by himself? That rock was not indigenous to the beach, it would have been carried there from far inland, and then for no apparent reason he erased his footprints around it. Then, even more inexplicably, he returned to the balloon site to get killed and buried. Henry Gale would have no reason to leave that beach after building the fire. For argument's sake, let's say that he did manage to haul that big rock to the beach and set up that fire. And let's suppose that the others spotted it and went to the beach to see what was up. They find Henry there and order him to take them back to the balloon site to prove his story. Ben sees that it's a Widmore-funded balloon and orders Henry's execution. Okay, but then why would they erase all the tracks around the signal fire? And then, more importantly, why would they leave the signal fire burning? The other problem I have with this theory is the timing. On the same day that the others plan to kidnap Walt, Russo overhears the whispers in the jungle warning that they are coming for the boy, which prompts her to go to the beach camp to warn our losties. And it just so happens that Henry lights the fire a few hours later, which just so happens to mirror the exact same pillar of smoke effect that Russo claims to have seen the day that Alex was kidnapped. That's a hell of a lot of coincidences lined up in a row, even for Lost. On the surface it's a cool tie-in with Henry Gale, but upon closer inspection it doesn't really hold together, and I don't believe that was what the writers intended. In fact, it's vastly overthinking the whole scenario. The second culprit whom people often suspect of setting the fire is Russo herself. Charlie seems to believe that anyway, that Russo had planned to steal Aaron all along and that she set the fire to con the Losties into the idea that the others were coming for them, whilst at the same time using the fire to signal to the others that she wants to parley. It makes Russo more devious and less opportunistic. However, the problem still remains. Why would there be no footprints? So the third, and frankly most likely scenario, is the one that the show actually puts forward, that the fire was set by the others. The smoke functions like misdirection in a magic trick, a visible threat designed to make the beach camp panic, scatter, and focus their defences inland. We can read it as a classic psychological manipulation by Ben. We know that who they really want is Walt. It's important to remember that at the point the fire is lit, the raft has not yet launched. We know that the others are fully aware of its existence since they are calmly waiting out at sea, ready to intercept the raft crew in order to snatch the boy, and Ben knows that without the right bearing the raft will simply go around in circles within the bubble. I think Ben didn't want to risk an incursion on the beach camp due to the sheer numbers of survivors occupying it, who were now armed with guns and had proven they were willing to kill to protect themselves. He learned from the mistakes they made with the tail section survivors on the other side of the island. So the way I see it is that the pillar of black smoke was a way to force the raft to launch early, with the specific intention of isolating Walt from the main camp, thereby making it easier to kidnap the boy without risking any major casualties on either side. And in the process, the smoke provides a distraction to the characters on the beach to make them run around like headless chickens in fear of what it means for them, allowing the others an opportunity to divide and conquer. I honestly think it's that simple, guys, and it fits with the kind of misdirection strategy that we know Ben often uses to get what he wants. Why did the others take Walt? In the Missing Pieces mobisode Room 23, Ben claims that it is Jacob who wanted them to take Walt.
This is your responsibility. You are the one who wanted him here.
Jacob wanted him here. He's important. He's special.
Now, if we are to take Ben at his word here, and I personally do, that means Jacob wanted to lob a grenade into the oceanic beach camp like this, because by taking Walt, it set off a chain reaction of events and choices that led to outcomes Jacob required. Taking Walt sets Michael on a path to the others, which will in turn set Ben on a path to the oceanic survivors. Michael will kill to get his son back. Ben will plant doubt in Locke about the button, leading to the Swan's destruction, and the butterfly effect will spread from there. It's about causality, and we know at this point in the story, Jacob is fully aware of what needs to happen in his long game against defeating the Man in Black. Walt does have a permanent future on the island, it's just not yet. As this is the last episode guide for Year 1, I'd like to take a look at the macro theme of the season. As we know, it dealt with many ideas, ranging from abstract concepts such as destiny to character-based emotional hang-ups like daddy issues. But what was the major overarching theme in Year 1? The umbrella under which all other themes sat. In my opinion, the macro theme of Year 1 is articulated perfectly by Jack in White Rabbit.
But if we can't live together, we're gonna die alone.
Season 1 is the season that focuses on the survival dilemma the most, for obvious reasons. We see some characters bloom under this new paradigm, like Locke, and others struggle and wither, like Charlie. We also meet Sawyer, who believes in every man for himself, the direct contrast to Jack's live together, die alone philosophy. Season 1 is about how these strangers come together and sort through their various interpersonal conflicts and respective character flaws in order to learn how to live together, from building a beach camp, to ensuring there is law and order amongst the survivors, and finding a way to work with one another despite personal tensions and prejudices. In order to survive, they must find water, hunt for food, create shelter from the elements, and fend off various dangers in the jungle. However, in order to thrive, they must become a village. In other words, it's live together, die alone versus every man for himself. Our Losties are at their finest when they are united. That is one of the main takeaway themes of the season finale. There is another sub-theme in Season 1 also worth discussing, and that is the theme of rebirth. The idea that these people have come to this island full of traumas and troubles, that their pasts are full of pain, anger, and regret, and it is in this strange place that they find a second chance to begin anew. They don't have to repeat the mistakes of the past, they can change and grow and become better people. In the process of learning this, they are reborn. We can also link this in with the sub-themes of letting go of the past and embracing second chances, they are all effectively the same thing. Rebirth just sounds neater. Our final number count for the season sees a whole lot of references flash before our eyes. Walt is watching TV at 5:23 AM. Rousseau once again makes reference to the events that happened to her 16 years ago. During Jack and Anna's first meeting, they swap seat numbers in the hopes of continuing their drinks and flirtation. Jack tells her he is 23B, whilst Anna tells him she is 42F. The raft crew are 15 miles away from the island when Sawyer turns on the radar and they pick up another vessel. And then there is a whole host of numbers references swirling around a very frazzled Hugo Reyes. His hotel room number is 2342. I'm surprised he didn't go mad when he saw that that was the room they'd assigned him. The speedometer on his dash drops from 42 kilometers an hour to 16, 15, 8, and finally 4, while the temperature gauge is at 23 degrees Celsius. In one of the more famous Easter egg shots from the show, Hurley runs past a team of soccer players with the numbers 4, 8, 15, 16, 23 and 42 on the back of their jerseys. The man that he buys the scooter from in the airport is wearing a Crazy Eights hat. Then Hurley offers him $1,600 for the scooter, and by the time Hurley finally makes it to the gate, he fails to notice Oceanic 815 is departing from gate 23. Finally, Hurley notices all 6 of his numbers inscribed on the hatch. The first half of Season 1 was great. It introduced everything needed to build an exciting and unique series upon. The second half was not as great. There's a lot of filler and a lot of treading water, and some distinctly average episodes mixed in with at least one legitimately rubbish one. Looking back, we can pinpoint exactly where the writer's room began to actively hamper the natural flow and pace and progress of their story in order to draw out a narrative that had no end date in sight. And I understand, what else could they do except bide some time? But this one step forward, 2 steps back approach would go on to define the next few seasons, and viewers would become more and more frustrated as this pattern continued into Season 3. I know many fans cite Season 1 as the show's peak, but I have never agreed with this. You can absolutely make that argument for the first half of Season 1, but I don't think you can really make it for the second half, which is all over the place in terms of consistency. I think the middle run of Season 1 is actually among the overall weak points of the series, and just as challenging to some people as the Hydra Island arc of Season 3 or the Temple arc of Season 6. When I used to rewatch Season 1 with new viewers back in the 2000s, which I did quite a bit to introduce people to it, their interest would almost always wane around whatever the case may be, and not really get one back until Numbers or Deus Ex Machina. I think a lot of first-time viewers today hit this mid-season slump and do struggle. Even when I rewatched the show with my wife in 2020, which was her first time, she genuinely lost interest around the midpoint of the season, and I had to make a deal with her that if the show did not win her back by the finale, then we would stop watching altogether. So, thank God for Exodus. I wanted to save this final point for the end of the Season 1 guide, since the writers themselves saved it for the very last scene of the season, and that's Jack and Locke gazing down into the hatch. Now, when this first aired, there was what can be best described as a backlash. There were a lot of unhappy campers among the audience. Is that it? Are we not going inside? We spent this whole season building up to it and they're leaving us on the hook. It's easy to forget how controversial this choice was in the beginning, so much so that the writers were forced to address the backlash in interviews afterwards, promising the fans that they would find out what was in the hatch right away in Season 2. I, for one, was more than happy with ending things like this in Year 1. As much as I wanted to know what was down there, this ending felt right in terms of storytelling. I actually remember a friend of mine calling me up after he watched it. Yeah, we called each other on the phone back then. And he declared to me sarcastically, "Wow, it's a ladder." And I had to counter his disappointment by saying that it was exciting to get just a glimpse, then be allowed to continue theorising about what they will find into next year. I admired the choice. This final shot continues to be the best example of the mystery box format of the series. The need to know what is inside the mystery box and the answer to the question, whatever that question may be, is far more powerful than any answer. And this was the writers telling us that while there might be answers within, we aren't always going to get them in the way we hope or expect. Sure, the Hatch mystery is definitively solved in Season 2, but there are more mysteries that it presents once we are inside of it. Some that are clear and self-explanatory, others that won't have clear explanations until later seasons, and some that are left entirely unresolved and ambiguous. Year 1's ending is the perfect cliffhanger to go out on in that regard. In some respects, it was a way for the showrunners to guarantee themselves an audience for the second season, but it was also about training audience expectation. This is a marathon, not a sprint. By lingering on the mystery, they ask us to continue imagining possibilities and asking questions for ourselves to keep the conversation going. That is the fundamental principle behind the mystery box, and the reason why the show became so divisive as it went on. Some people are like Jack. They just want concrete answers rooted in the real world that they can see and understand, and they want them sooner rather than later. Anything less will feel like a betrayal or a cop-out. For those of us who are willing to trust the writer's deferral to give us those answers later, we had to be more like John Locke and maintain faith that our patience would one day be rewarded, even if the answers would come in ways we never expected or even realised. In other words, the way you responded to this finale either made you a man of science or a man of faith. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Year 1 done. Thank you so much for sticking with this guide. I hope to be able to continue this project all the way to the end, but I can't do it without your help. The views on this playlist could be a lot better, so I need you to watch any guides you may have missed and to share the content with other Lost fans wherever you may find them. Liking and subscribing is of course always a big help too. Additionally, you can support me on Patreon, which helps me more directly, where you can see content much earlier on there and get some exclusive content not available anywhere else. Next up, I'm going to list my Season 1 episode rankings, and then a supercut of every Season 1 mystery answered, so keep an eye out for those. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you, hopefully, back on the island.